We're about to begin a brand new love journey. Please comment on where you're watching from so we can see that our Soul Stories family is all around the world. Harper Lee didn't believe in destiny, but if instant karma existed, she had just experienced it within 3 hours of getting the keys to her new apartment. 42 steps, 2 boxes of books, 1 suitcase containing exactly 6 pairs of shoes, and a candle labeled Hope Scent. The result? Sweat-drenched hair glued to her neck, and so hungry she almost chewed on her breakfast at Tiffany's poster. Apartment 3B looked like a post-apocalyptic scene, with cardboard everywhere, half-assembled IKEA chairs, and the neighbor's cat peeking through the door crack as if assessing her survival skills. Harper dropped onto the floor, pulled out her phone, and texted her best friend and emotional support human, Zoe. I survived. 2847 Maple Street, apartment 3B. There's wine. Come save me. She hit send and exhaled. The world could rest now. So could she. Except Harper didn't notice her sweaty finger had tapped the wrong contact. Instead of Zoe, her message went to someone saved as Ollie G, a random contact, probably from her short-lived stint selling books online last year. The message flew off, and fate clocked in for work. Across town on the 47th floor of the glass-walled Grant Tower, Oliver Grant stood before a panoramic view of Manhattan, a glass of whiskey in hand, eyes sweeping the city lights like he owned the universe. Same routine every night: work, reports, shareholders, and the kind of silence that echoed louder than noise. His phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. I survived. 2847 Maple Street, apartment 3B. There's wine. Come save me. Oliver frowned. Probably a wrong number or some new scam. He was about to delete it until he saw the next line. Miss you already. A strange, rough laugh escaped him, rusty and offbeat. When was the last time anyone missed him? Right, never. He stared at the glowing screen and murmured to himself, if this is spam, I've officially lost my mind. The next morning, Harper woke up lying on top of an empty pizza box. Her hair looked like a bird's nest. Sunlight streamed through the window, but the apartment was eerily quiet. Good morning, solitude, she muttered, opening the cupboard to find only a half-empty wine bottle and an expired box of cereal from Christmas. She was about to change and go get coffee when, knock, knock, knock. 3 firm, confident knocks are the kind delivered by debt collectors or insurance salesmen. Zoe, if that's you and you didn't bring wine, I'm not opening. No answer. Instead, a deep male voice, too polite to trust, replied, Good morning, Miss Harper Lee. I'm here to congratulate you on your new apartment. Harper squinted through the peephole. A man in a gray suit, polished shoes, holding sunflowers and a box of chocolates. He looked like he'd stepped out of a Dior commercial. She, on the other hand, was wearing a t-shirt that read, Pizza is my spirit animal. Who are you? She demanded. Oliver Grant, he said calmly. You texted me last night. Address, wine, and miss you already. Harper froze. Oh God. She grabbed the nearest thing resembling a weapon, a can of pepper spray, and aimed it right at him. Step back 3 feet. I don't know you. Oliver raised his hands, completely unbothered. You don't remember sending a text? 2847 Maple Street, apartment 3B. I remember, but I didn't send it to a guy in a suit holding flowers. Well, he shrugged. Wine and flowers usually come together. I just picked the safer half. She blinked. Either he was insane or dangerously charming. Do you realize 90% of horror movies start exactly like this? She said. Oliver smiled slightly. And the other 10%? Rom-coms. I'm still not sure which one this is. Eventually, after confirming he wasn't armed and the flowers weren't poisoned, Harper reluctantly opened the door. Oliver stepped in, scanning the sea of boxes. Just moved in? No, I just like living in post-hurricane chic. He laughed, a short, genuine sound. I can help you with that, Cher. I worked in an assembly shop in college. You can code and build IKEA furniture? That's a mythological creature right there. I just wanted an excuse not to leave yet. She blinked, caught off guard by his honesty. Aren't you afraid I'll call the cops? I brought flowers. No one gets arrested for flowers. They ended up sitting across from each other, coffee steaming between them. Harper sighed. My life's a mess. I just broke up, moved out, and now apparently I'm making coffee for a stranger who claims he's a victim of a wrong text. Oliver nodded slowly. And I just got the first message in months that made me smile. The words were quiet, simple, but they landed heavily. Harper rolled her eyes to hide the warmth creeping in. You say that to all the girls? Never. I usually talk to board members, but they don't smile. She burst out laughing. So you actually have no social life? I do. It's called a daily meeting schedule. They both laughed awkwardly, genuinely, and unexpectedly comfortably. For the first time in months, Harper felt alive. When Oliver left, he placed the bouquet of sunflowers on her table. Harper stared at it, both amused and confused. Before stepping out, he turned and said, If you ever plan to send another wrong text, I suggest sending it to me again. I reply fast. Harper snorted. I'm blocking you the minute you walk out. Go ahead. I'll still bring flowers. The door closed. Harper stood there, heart beating a little faster. Her phone buzzed. A new message from Ollie G. Thanks for the coffee. Next time, make it wine. Harper chuckled, leaning back against the wall. Wrong text, she murmured. Right kind of crazy. Harper's second morning in her new apartment began with three things: a doorbell, the smell of burnt coffee, and the sudden regret of posting officially single and as free as a bird online at 2 a.m. She was still in her sleep shirt that said, Pizza is my spirit animal. Her hair looked like it had survived static shock, and she was holding a mug with a grinning cat on it, definitely not ready to meet anyone. The doorbell rang again. Knock, knock, knock. She frowned. Zoe, if that's you and you didn't bring wine, I swear I'll. The door cracked open and Harper froze. Standing there was a tall man in a sharp gray suit, polished shoes, holding a bouquet of sunflowers in one hand and a fancy box of chocolates in the other. He looked like he'd walked straight out of GQ to hand out flyers for heaven. Congratulations on the new apartment, Miss Harper Lee, he said, voice deep and polite, paired with a smile that said, I own everything but emotions. Harper blinked. 1, 2, 3 seconds. How do you know my name? You sent me your address. And just like that, it hit her the text from last night. God. She had sent it to him, the stranger named Ollie G. Wait, hold on. She stepped back, hands up like a cop stopping a suspect. Who are you? How do you know where I live? And why the flowers? After a message about wine and miss you already, he said calmly, I figured congratulations were in order. Harper gawked. You think that's normal? People get arrested for less. Then I hope sunflowers aren't classified as weapons. Her brow arched. He just made a joke. A cold-faced CEO who jokes. Suspicious. She quickly grabbed her can of pepper spray from her purse, her only weapon besides a cactus and a box of expired cookies. You've got 2 choices. Leave or enjoy 3 days of burning eyes. Oliver raised an eyebrow, intrigued. You'd really spray someone who brought you flowers? You showed up at my door with chocolates. Who does that? A man who received a wrong text and has an excellent sense of customer service. She almost sprayed him just to wipe that calm expression off his face. A gust of wind swept through the hallway, making the flowers sway, long enough for him to add softly, I'm not dangerous, just curious, and honestly, a little lonely. Something in his tone made her hesitate. Not weak, not fake, just real. She lowered the can an inch. You promised not to use that line before stabbing me? I don't have that kind of appointment today. Funny, real funny, Jason Bourne in business casual. After a few tense seconds, Harper sighed and opened the door wider. Fine, come in, but stay at least 3 meters away and don't touch anything. Understood. FBI-level safety protocol. The apartment was small, messy, but cozy in a post-breakdown survivor kind of way. Oliver set the flowers on the table, glancing around. Unassembled chairs, empty pizza boxes, a few books teetering on the edge. Just moved in? No, I call this aesthetic apocalypse chic. He chuckled, a short, genuine laugh that threw her off balance. Coffee? she asked, trying to sound steady. As long as it's not poisoned. No promises, but it's cheap, so probably safe. She poured two mismatched mugs. He picked it up, noticing the grinning cat. Cute. Don't flirt. I'm still considering the pepper spray. A brief, awkward silence. Harper crossed her arms, half leaning on the counter. All right, Oliver Grant. Or should I say, Ollie G., what possessed you to show up at my place? His tone was calm. I was working late, saw your text, and it made me laugh. It's been a long time since I got a message that wasn't attached to a spreadsheet. So you thought I was some kind of social experiment? No, I thought you were the first person to make me smile without a dividend. Her mouth opened, but her heart betrayed her first. She sipped her coffee, pretending to be unimpressed. Do you always talk like you're in a shareholders meeting? I can try a different tone if you'd prefer. I prefer one that doesn't make me want to hide under the table. Feedback received. Harper laughed a real laugh, and surprisingly, Oliver laughed too. They talked about ridiculous things. Why sunflowers always face up. Low-gravity self-esteem, he said. Why chocolate was the weapon of love, because regret follows consumption. And why the neighbor's cat, Mr. Pickles, kept staring at him. He smells 8-figure bank accounts. Somehow it all felt oddly easy. When Oliver finally stood to leave, he glanced back and said softly, "Thanks for not spraying me. Still thinking about it. If you ever send another wrong text, send it to me." I reply fast. "I'm blocking you as soon as you walk out." "I'll still bring flowers." She narrowed her eyes. "Do you always try to be this confusing?" "No, only when someone's the right kind of wrong." She mimed spraying him. He laughed again and disappeared down the hallway. When the door closed, Harper leaned back against the wall, heart beating faster than it should. On the table, the bouquet of sunflowers glowed bright among the chaos of boxes. Next to it sat the untouched box of chocolates and a neatly folded note. "I guess I've never been invited to a morning mess quite like this." O.G. Harper smiled, both baffled and intrigued. Her phone buzzed. A new text. "Thanks for the coffee. Next time, I hope the wine doesn't burn." She shook her head, sinking into her chair, whispering to herself. Wrong text. But karma definitely got it right. Tuesday, 8 a.m. Harper had just plugged in the kettle when the doorbell rang again. She glared at the door and muttered, "If it's him again, I'm actually changing the locks." The door swung open, and of course it was him, Oliver Grant. Light blue shirt, slacks, neatly combed hair, holding 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag of croissants. "Good morning, Ms. Pizza is my spirit animal," he said lightly, flashing that classic, unapologetic CEO smile. "You do realize normal people show up after being invited, right?" Harper said, arms crossed. "I do, but I'm not normal. Congratulations, at least you're self-aware." She blocked the doorway, half amused, half suspicious. "What are you doing here? Another thank you visit for the coffee yesterday?" "No, I came to make amends. Yesterday I might have overstepped. Today I come bearing caffeine." Harper eyed the cups. She couldn't tell if she should be annoyed or impressed. "You brought the strongest weapon possible." "I know. It's the only legal way to earn forgiveness in New York." She sighed and stepped aside. "Fine. Come in, but this time, stay in one place." "Understood." CEO honors intrusion mode off. They sat at the small kitchen table. The sunflowers still stood tall in a glass jar Harper had borrowed from her spaghetti container. Morning light spilled through the window, catching the steam from the coffee, and for one fleeting moment, Harper felt strangely at peace. "All right," she began. "Let's recap. I sent a wrong text. You showed up. I nearly pepper sprayed you, and now you're back with coffee. You do realize this is deeply alarming, right?" Oliver nodded, calm as ever, as if they were discussing quarterly earnings. "I realize that, but I decided to believe in optimistic statistics." "What kind of statistics?" "That about 1% of wrong texts lead to a memorable conversation." "And you think this is one of those?" "I'm hoping so. I don't get many interesting texts." She laughed. "Really? A millionaire CEO doesn't get messages?" "Oh, I do. Mostly things like, 'Please review Clause B of the contract,' or 'Would you like to update your investment portfolio?'" Wow, no wonder you look like someone who hasn't smiled since college. He lowered his head slightly, smiling with his lips pressed together. Accurate. Yesterday was the first time I laughed without a profit attached. Harper wanted to make a sarcastic comment, but that honest, almost shy smile caught her off guard. You know, she said, sipping her coffee, 80% of horror movies start exactly the way you're acting. And the other 20%? He asked. Rom-coms. Don't get your hopes up. Oliver leaned back casually. What if I pick the 20%? Then you'll need something more than flowers and chocolates. Like what? A rescue dog. Or a screenplay written by Nora Ephron. I don't have a dog, but I do have a self-driving car. Sorry, not as romantic as a dog. They both laughed, and Harper realized she'd been laughing way too much for a morning she had planned to be grumpy. Eventually, they started talking about themselves. Harper shared that she worked at a bookstore, once dreamed of being a writer, but now pays rent faster than she can dream. Oliver admitted he liked small coffee shops, but never had time to enjoy one without an assistant whispering, "You have a meeting in 5." Are you always this serious? She teased. Not always. I used to be fun. Used to? Before everything came with a price tag. That made Harper pause. A price tag? Yeah, when you have money, everything, even emotions, gets labeled with value. Harper rested her chin on her hand, eyes softening. That's kind of sad. Sad but true. She let the silence breathe, then smirked. Well, I'm unpriceable, either too cheap or too complicated. I'd say too genuine. Are you flirting with me, Mr. CEO? I wouldn't dare. You still have pepper spray. Good, keep that in mind. The coffee was nearly gone, but neither wanted to move. Harper leaned forward, voice lighter. So tell me, are you here because you're curious or because you needed someone to talk to? Oliver looked at her steadily, eyes calm and strangely sincere. Both. But if I had to choose, I'd say, because of you. She laughed, but her heart skipped a beat. You talk like you've known me forever. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just good at recognizing someone who makes breathing easier. Harper smirked, trying to hide the warmth rising in her chest. You should be careful. Lots of people feel comfortable before they're strangled in horror movies. Oliver tilted his head, voice soft and teasing. If I die in apartment 3B, at least I'll die comfortably. She threw a pillow at him, laughing. You're not allowed to say stuff like that in a seductive tone. Laughter filled the tiny apartment, real laughter, not polite or forced. It hit Harper that she hadn't laughed like this in months. When Oliver finally stood to leave, he said, Thanks for the coffee. I'll pay for the croissants next time. You assume there'll be a next time? I hope so. But if not, I'll still bring flowers. You're obsessed with flowers. Maybe. Or I just like seeing you smile. She crossed her arms, pretending to frown. You're towing a very fine line between charming and creepy. I'll stay on the charming side. Your choice. But remember, I still have the pepper spray. He smiled, gave a small bow, and left. The door closed. The apartment fell quiet again. Harper sat down, staring at the sunflowers and the half-empty cup of coffee. Her phone buzzed. Oh, gee. Forgot to ask, are you allergic to flowers? Because I'm thinking of bringing a different kind next time. Harper bit her lip, heart skipping again, then typed back. I'm only allergic to people who show up unannounced. Oh, gee. I'll schedule an appointment first. Coffee or wine? Harper. Depends. Are you bringing chocolate? Oh, gee. Always. She laughed and tossed her phone onto the couch. Outside the window, sunlight fell over the bright sunflowers, bold, a little ridiculous, and warm enough to make her heart feel alive again. She didn't know what this was the beginning of, but at least this time, her mistake came with the taste of coffee and laughter. When Oliver Grant asked her out to dinner, Harper Lee spent 5 minutes doubting it, 10 minutes denying it, and another 40 convincing herself that it was strictly friendly. Because really, what kind of friend books a table at Le Papillon? The kind of restaurant where every dish's name is longer than her boss's emails? She stared at his text. Oh, gee. Friday, 7 p.m. I made a reservation. Don't bring the pepper spray. She typed back, Harper, if you pick a place with a menu that doesn't end in zeros, I might consider it. But by 6:30 p.m., She was standing in front of her mirror, wearing a red dress, soft curls, and heels that screamed poor life choices, shaking like she was about to interview for the position of trial girlfriend. Relax, she told her reflection. It's just dinner, not a proposal. Then she glanced down at her brand new 10-centimeter stilettos and nodded proudly. I'll look stunning until I fall. At exactly 6:59, she stepped out of a cab onto the polished stone sidewalk of Manhattan's Upper East Side, and in that very instant, fate decided to test how badly she wanted to live. Crack! Her right heel snapped clean in half, in perfect slow motion. Harper froze partly from pain, mostly from humiliation. She crouched down, muttering, "This is what I get for lying to myself. I should have worn flats." She limped forward, half injured, half determined, when a sleek black car pulled up beside her. The door opened and out stepped Oliver. Black suit, white shirt, tie loosened just enough. He looked like a cologne commercial, exuding confidence and a six-figure income. He stopped, taking in the scene. Harper wobbling, one hand holding her broken heel, the other clutching a lamppost for dear dignity. "Did I arrive in time to save you?" he asked smoothly. "Or just in time to laugh?" "You arrived just in time to witness the downfall of 21st century feminism." He frowned, then, without warning, turned his back to her. "Get on." "Excuse me?" "Piggyback. I'm not letting you limp into the restaurant like you survived a robbery." "I can walk." "Harper, you're standing on one leg. I'll call a cab." "Cabs don't carry wounded pride." She wanted to argue, but he was already bending lower, and maybe it was the tone in his voice or those calm eyes that made it all seem so ordinary, prompting her to sigh and climb onto his back. If anyone had taken a photo at that moment, it would have gone viral with the caption, "When a CEO moonlights as an ambulance for the girl who texted him by mistake." Oliver strode into the restaurant, Harper on his back, her hands resting lightly on his shoulders. Conversation stopped. Forks paused midair. A waitress whispered, "Oh my God, he's carrying her." "That's so romantic." Harper's face burned red. "Put me down before someone live streams this." "Relax, you're making me look like a considerate man." "Trust me, I'm trying not to become a branded liability called Harper Lee, the Burden Edition." When he finally set her down, she whispered, "You know everyone here thinks I'm your girlfriend now." "You object?" "I object to not getting to pick the role first." Dinner began with white wine and a starter whose name she couldn't pronounce. Harper took a small bite, then grimaced. "This tastes like disappointment drizzled in olive oil." Oliver chuckled. "That's carpaccio de saumon à la truffe blanche." Meaning, thinly sliced salmon with white truffle, so cold fish and expensive fungus. "Great. I've basically ordered minimum wage survival with garnish." He laughed, a real unguarded laugh. "You make me forget why I picked this place." "To impress me, obviously." "No, to see if you could survive in my world, and I'm failing spectacularly." "On the contrary, you make it better." She fell silent for a moment, eyes flicking down to her plate, because the way he said it made her heartbeat lose its rhythm. Everything was fine until a too familiar voice came from the next table. "Harper?" She turned. Mason, her ex. Perfect brown hair, expensive suit, and sitting beside a blonde with a smile so sweet it gave Harper a toothache. "Oh," Harper said brightly. "Mason. Long time. Didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I, especially not in the restaurant you once called pretentious nonsense." Oliver tilted his head, silent but clearly entertained. The blonde leaned closer, her voice syrupy. "Oh, Mason, is she an old friend?" "Old friend," Harper said sweetly, "as an outdated system update that kept crashing." Oliver took a sip of wine, hiding his grin. Mason's smile faltered. "Didn't think you'd be with someone." "Why not?" "You have exclusive rights to fine dining now?" The tension was thick enough to slice. A waiter subtly backed away. Harper was about to excuse herself when Oliver placed a calm hand over hers. "Don't worry," he murmured. "Crisis management is my specialty, even when it involves broken heels." She laughed, and that sound, light, easy, seemed to stun Mason. Then Oliver leaned forward, speaking just loud enough for the next table to hear. Sweetheart, your favorite dessert is the chocolate mousse, right? Without missing a beat, Harper replied, Yeah, as long as you don't eat all of it this time. Mason froze. The blonde blinked. Harper took a sip of wine, victorious. You just saved me from a social meltdown, she whispered. No problem. I charge by the hour. How much? One glass of wine and a smile. Can I pay in installments? Emotional interest rates are high. She burst out laughing for the first time in years, not nervously, not bitterly, but freely. When they left the restaurant, Harper walked barefoot, heels in hand. Oliver opened the car door and asked, You okay? I just proved that women can survive without shoes but not without a well-timed rescue. An honor to serve. As the car drove through the glowing streets of Manhattan, Harper looked out the window. The city lights flickered across her face, soft and golden. She didn't know if this counted as a real date, but if this was what a disaster felt like, she wouldn't mind a few more. Harper Lee had never woken up to a luxury breakfast ambush, but this morning, that's exactly what happened. At 8 sharp, someone knocked on her door. Not a mailman knock, not a neighbor borrowing sugar knock. It was the confident kind, the kind that came with a marketing budget. Harper opened the door, hair messy, pajamas wrinkled, and there he was, like a walking meme of contrast perfection. Oliver Grant. Rolled up sleeves, a wooden tray in his hands, complete with coffee, croissants, scrambled eggs, and fresh strawberries. Do you have a schedule or something? She rasped. You just appear with food every time I'm emotionally confused? Correct, he said, calm as ever, setting the tray on her table. My strategy, feed first, talk later. Harper arched an eyebrow. That sounds like how people tame stray cats. I'm testing it on humans. Not sure if I should feel touched or experimented on. Touched? This breakfast cost twice the average emotional investment? She snorted but smiled anyway. You always prepare things like you're about to host a board meeting? Occupational habit. Occupation meaning what, friendly intruder/breakfast chef? Friendly, yes. As for occupation, he paused. Not quite time for that reveal yet. They ate in soft morning light filtering through the window. Harper chewed slowly, studying him. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't even talking business. He quietly refilled her coffee, watching her as if that calm silence was worth more than any deal. You seriously have nothing better to do? She asked. I do, but this is more interesting than any meeting. I'm starting to doubt your work ethic. That's fine, as long as you finish the strawberries. She laughed, popping one in her mouth. If I didn't know better, I'd think you're doing PR for kindness. He tilted his head. Want to hear a confession? Is it dangerous? You decide. He set down his coffee, his voice lower, steadier, more real than before. I don't know anyone like you. You don't try to impress people. You just make them feel at ease. Harper froze, half skeptical, half flustered. You talk like you're writing Valentine's cards. I don't write cards, I just tell the truth. The air grew warmer and quieter, until Harper cleared her throat, eager to steer away from the sudden intimacy. So, what do you actually do for a living? He took a sip of coffee, that familiar calm still in his eyes. I run a small fintech company. How small? A few hundred employees, headquarters in Midtown. Name? Grant Tech. Harper blinked. Wait, Grant Tech as in the giant billboard on Fifth Avenue? Yes. And Grant, as in Oliver Grant, the CEO Forbes called the wolf in a gray suit? He pressed his lips together and nodded. 3 seconds of silence. Then Harper shouted, I've been dating Jeff Bezos with better hair? Oliver laughed, bowing his head slightly. Interesting comparison. I'm fond of my current hair, though. You're an actual millionaire? Subtract a few zeros for taxes, but yes, roughly. Oh my God, I've been eating croissants made by a man whose net worth equals a small country's GDP. Oliver's tone softened. Are you angry? No, just give me a minute to digest this. And the eggs. She started pacing. You let me think you were just some quirky, lonely guy with a sunflower obsession. I told you about my breakup, my crazy boss, And you said nothing about being able to buy my boss's entire building." He stayed silent for a few beats, then spoke quietly. "I just wanted someone to like me for me, not for my credit card." That stopped her cold. A simple line, but it landed deep. "You think I'd like you for your money?" I think most people start there. It's not their fault. But I wanted something different. She sighed, voice softening. "And you picked me because I didn't know who you were." "I didn't pick. I just hoped to get lucky for once." Harper sat back down, staring at him. Then she laughed, shaking her head. "You realize this sounds exactly like a movie, right?" "Haven't seen it." "It ends with the woman freaking out and running away. Like I'm considering right now." "Will you?" "Haven't decided." "Should I bring more food to negotiate?" "No, just bring the truth sooner next time." "Fair deal." The tension melted. Sunlight fell across his face. A man who could run a multi-million-dollar company and still peel strawberries with a plastic knife in her tiny kitchen. "Do you ever feel lonely in that rich world of yours?" she asked quietly. "Always." "And now?" "A little less." "Because someone just asked." She smiled, warm and unguarded. "Good. But next time you show up at my door, at least send a resume first." "Noted." Customer feedback received. When Oliver left, he placed a small folded note beside the breakfast tray. Harper opened it. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. "Not every truth needs to be spoken right away. Some need to be understood before they're heard." "Oh, gee." She smiled to herself. On the table, 2 strawberries remained. She bit into one and muttered, "Sweet?" "Annoyingly sweet, just like him." People say trouble comes right when you start believing life is finally okay. And Harper Lee had just entered that artificially okay phase. The kind with sunflowers and morning texts that said, "Did you have breakfast yet?" Oliver Grant, once described by the press as the CEO with a titanium heart, now delivered coffee every morning to a girl in apartment 3B who didn't even own a coffee machine. And Harper, the same woman who once swore she'd never fall for another man in a suit, had started smiling every time her phone lit up with OG. Everything was good, until Mason came back. Saturday morning, Harper was taping a help wanted part-time bookseller sign outside the little bookshop when she heard a voice she'd hoped to never hear again. "Still haven't found a buyer, huh?" She turned. Mason. White shirt, half smile. That same half smile that used to make her foolishly believe, he's not cold, just busy. "Mason," she said flatly, "you look different." "Happy?" "Sort of." "Because of the new guy?" Harper gave a thin smile. "We're not close enough to discuss my emotional health anymore." But Mason didn't back off. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I heard you're seeing Oliver Grant. Grant Tech Grant. And? And you do realize how rich he is, right?" "What are you playing at?" Harper's eyes sharpened. "Playing happy without you in the cast." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there humiliated and, predictably, plotting. A few days later, Oliver was waiting for Harper at their usual spot, the roastery on 9th. What he didn't expect was someone else sliding into the seat across from him. "Mason." "You're Grant, right?" Mason began, voice half polite, half poisonous. "I don't believe we've met." "No, but we seem to share mutual interest." Oliver regarded him with the calm expression of a man enduring an unscheduled board meeting. "I just wanted to warn you," Mason continued. "That woman Harper, she's good. You know she once wrote a 5,000-word essay to demand a $1 refund for mispriced coffee?" Oliver raised an eyebrow, amused. "Sounds financially conscientious." "Conscientious? She'll clean you out." "You think I don't know how to manage my assets?" Oliver replied smoothly, taking a sip. "I think you've never met a woman who'd write 5,000 words over $1. Actually, I find that fascinating." Mason blinked. "Are you kidding me?" "No. I invest in people who understand the value of $1. Just as the tension started to boil, a familiar voice cut through the air. "Oh, perfect. A meeting about me, and no one thought to send me an invite?" Harper stood at the entrance, denim jacket, eyes blazing. She looked from Mason to Oliver. "I've heard enough to know exactly who said what." Mason raised his hands. I was just, don't, she snapped. You've done enough just. Then she turned to Oliver, voice trembling with anger. And you, why were you sitting there listening to him instead of throwing him out? Harper, no. Do you know what I hate most? Being discussed like a high-risk investment portfolio. People in the cafe had started watching. Oliver stood, reaching toward her, but she stepped back. Harper, I didn't believe anything he said. Then why didn't you walk away? Because I wanted to hear it from him to understand his intentions. Oh, wonderful. Mr. Grant Tech's CEO likes investigating his women now? The air thickened, bitter with roasted coffee and pride. Mason tried to interject, but Oliver's voice turned ice cold. You should leave. Before I forget, this is a public place. Mason smirked and shrugged, walking out, leaving a silence sharp enough to cut through glass. Harper turned away, wiping her eyes quickly. Oliver followed her outside, calling after her. Harper, wait. No, I need air and space. I don't deserve to be treated like I doubted you. And I don't deserve to be evaluated. She stopped at the corner, whirling around. You think because you have money everything can be explained? You can talk calmly, logically, like a CEO giving a press release, but you don't understand what it's like to constantly prove you don't need saving. Oliver said nothing. For the first time, the man with all the right words had none. Harper's voice broke slightly. I don't need you to protect me. I just need you to believe me. Then she turned and walked away fast, furious, fragile. The sunflower he'd been holding slipped from his hand, falling onto the pavement, its petals bending in the wind. Oliver stood frozen among the crowd. Someone stepped on the fallen flower, crushing its yellow edge. He crouched, picking it up, closing it gently in his fist. On his phone, a message blinked, sent by Harper just before everything went wrong. Have you had your coffee yet? I've got good news to tell you. He read it and exhaled a quiet, broken laugh. Yeah, he murmured to himself, but it tastes a little more bitter today. If Harper Lee had a list titled, Things You Should Never Do When You've Just Started Dating a CEO, then meeting his stepmother at a formal dinner would be at the very top, bolded, underlined, and highlighted in red. But Oliver Grant didn't ask. He just smiled, handed her an invitation, and said as casually as if he were suggesting a movie night, Tonight, I want you to meet someone important. That someone important turned out to be Vivian Grant, his stepmother, a fashion icon and investment mogul better known in financial circles as the Black Ice Queen. And Harper, who barely understood what semi-formal dress code meant, now stood in a glittering crystal dining hall, wearing slightly rain-soaked white Converse. Dinner began with classical music, red wine, and an atmosphere so tense it felt like she was interviewing for the position of future Mrs. CEO. Vivian sat perfectly straight, glass of wine in hand, smiling at Harper with the precision of a surgeon. Ms. Lee, she began, voice smooth and cool, I heard you and Oliver met through a wrong text? Yes, Harper said lightly, a very 4G version of fate. Vivian's smile didn't reach her eyes. How charming. She paused, then added, And what do you do for a living, Miss Lee? Harper took a breath, keeping her polite smile steady. I survive, ma'am. Vivian raised an eyebrow, lips curving half a centimeter. Survive? Yes, I sell books, pay rent, eat instant noodles, and still believe in humanity. In this economy, that's a survival skill. Oliver stifled a laugh. Vivian didn't. The air grew as thick as the truffle soup in front of them. Throughout dinner, Vivian launched subtle, life-value quizzes, while Harper defended herself with dry humor and cheerful stubbornness. Do you have plans for the future? I was planning to buy the planet, but for now I'm focusing on my electricity bill. Oliver needs someone who understands what it means to be a Grant. I understand responsibility means splitting dessert, though the Grants seem to prefer keeping it all. Oliver nearly choked on his wine. Harper grinned. Vivian smiled too, but her eyes went colder. Soul Stories fam, if you're watching on another channel, come home to us at Soul Stories, where tens of thousands of listeners and sharers come together. As the meal drew to a close, Vivian set down her glass and turned to her stepson. Oliver, do you remember what your father left behind? You mean the company or the advice? Both, including the rule, never let emotion interfere with reason. Harper glanced at him. His hand was clenched. Vivian continued, her voice low, cuttingly precise. I can see you have charm, Ms. Lee, but charm isn't enough. You don't belong in our world. Oliver deserves someone of equal standing, not a bookseller. The words hit the table like breaking glass. Harper froze. Her face flushed, not from shame, but fury. She took a deep breath and smiled, a soft smile edged with fire. Thank you, but you're mistaken. I don't need to fit into your world. I just need to fit into my own. Vivian tilted her head, replying silkily, confidence is admirable, but the real world doesn't reward it. Neither does arrogance. Harper, Oliver murmured warningly, but she was already standing. I'm sorry, but I can't sit here another minute listening to people score my worth like a credit rating. She laid her napkin down and turned toward the door. Vivian didn't stop her. She simply sipped her wine and said coolly, choose wisely, Oliver. Reputation is hard to build and easier to ruin, usually by the wrong woman. The door closed behind her. Oliver rose slowly. Mother, he said evenly, if I remember Father's lessons, I also remember one more thing he used to say. Reason is just an excuse for people who are afraid to love. Vivian looked up, but he was already gone. Outside, rain had begun to fall. Harper walked quickly along the wet stone pavement, her white Converse soaked through. Thunder rumbled far away, blending with the city's hum. Part of her wanted to go back. The rest just wanted to disappear. Then a voice called out behind her. Harper, wait! She turned. Oliver stood there in the rain, shirt plastered to his skin, eyes stripped of pride, only sincerity left. I thought you'd stay, she said hoarsely. I couldn't. What about your mother? She has the whole world. I just have you and this rain to prove I'm not anywhere else. Harper let out a small, trembling laugh. You really have terrible timing for romance. I'm freezing. I'll work on that. But first, give me a chance to walk with you. She studied him, her expression softening. You sure? Because once you leave, you can't stand between both worlds anymore. I know. And I'm choosing the one with soaked Converse. She laughed, half tears, half rain. You know how to make a woman want to slap you and kiss you at the same time? I'm learning. Oliver reached out and took her hand. They walked through the downpour together, beneath the dim yellow glow of the streetlights. Behind them, the Grant mansion blazed like a cold fortress. Ahead, there was only the rain, a small umbrella, and their laughter melting into the night. 3 days after the dinner with the stepmother disaster, Harper Lee had returned to her version of normal, or at least she was doing a very convincing impression of it. She was restocking shelves at Leaf and Latte, the cozy bookstore cafe where she worked. Outside, it was raining again. On the radio, Elvis crooned, "Can't help falling in love," as if the universe had a dark sense of humor. Zoe, her best friend and co-worker, rested her chin on her hand behind the counter, watching Harper with the same look one gives a tragic movie heroine. I swear, Zoe said, if he doesn't show up today, you're officially starring in a TikTok called Strong Woman Survives CEO. Harper sighed, stacking books like she was trying to bury her own thoughts. Zoe, not everyone who disappears after a storm is a villain. True, but if a villain brings flowers, he's still easier to forgive than the hero who ghosts you for 3 days. Harper opened her mouth to respond, and then the doorbell chimed. The tiny world of Leaf and Latte held its breath. Oliver Grant stood in the doorway, soaked, dripping, and, as Zoe later described, like an investment cat who just lost a fortune. His shirt clung to his chest, hair plastered to his forehead, raindrops gliding down his face. He was breathing hard as if he'd sprinted across half the city. The shop fell utterly silent. Zoe's jaw dropped. Harper froze. What are you doing here? She asked, voice low, caught somewhere between shock and panic. I came to fix what I broke. Zoe whispered, wide-eyed. Oh my God, this is a scene. Oliver stepped inside. Rainwater dripped onto the wooden floor as he stood between the narrow aisles. Eyes locked on Harper, steady, exhausted, sincere. I don't care what she does for a living, he said loudly, voice cutting through the sound of the rain. I just know she's the one who makes me want to be real. Every head in the cafe turned. For a heartbeat, no one said a word. The only sound was the patter of rain and Zoe quietly pulling out her phone camera. "What are you doing?" Harper hissed. "Saying what I should have said 3 days ago. Here? In public? In front of the world, if that's what it takes." "Oh, Lord," Zoe whispered. "The lighting is perfect." Harper's face flushed half embarrassment, half disbelief. "You know you're breaking the world record for public cringe, right?" Oliver smiled softly. "If it makes you smile, I'll take the title." Laughter rippled through the room. A few customers started recording. An elderly lady browsing romance novels muttered, "He looks sincere, dear." "Don't be stupid." Harper crossed her arms, pretending to be composed, though her voice trembled. "You think one dramatic speech in the rain makes up for everything?" "No, but it's a start. Aren't you scared this will end up online?" "I'm more scared I won't get to see you again." The words landed like raindrops on still water, soft but echoing deep. Zoe leaned toward a customer and whispered, "I don't know who he is, but he should teach a masterclass in Confession 101. Harper stepped closer, still pretending to be annoyed. "You really think you can walk in here, melt my bookstore, and just get forgiven?" "No, I just hope you'll let me get drenched with you again. You're impossible, honest, and ridiculous." "Accurate." Rain shimmered through the window, reflecting on his face. No longer the cold CEO, but a man stripped of armor. "I used to think emotions made me weak," he said softly, "but when you walked away, I realized they're the only thing that makes me human." The shop went quiet. Even Zoe stopped breathing for a second. "Okay," she whispered. "This is the part where Netflix adds the background music." Harper looked at him, half moved, half exasperated. "You're insane." "I know. And soaked. Comes with the guilt package. People are filming you, you know. At least I'll look better than in those failed cooking videos." She sighed, stepping closer, brushing a raindrop from his sleeve. "You're ruining my expensive wooden floor." "I'll pay for it with anything, as long as you don't walk away." A pause, then she smiled small, genuine. "You know, I hate that you always win. I only win when you smile." "Fine, you win again, Mr. Cringe CEO. I'll take that trophy." "I'm still mad." "Good. Anger means you still care." From behind the counter, Zoe shouted, "Give me a finale, you two." Harper glared at her friend, then turned back to Oliver. He was looking at her like the rest of the world had disappeared. "You do realize you're standing in a bookstore, right?" she murmured. "Yeah, and this is the chapter I want to write with you." Then he kissed her gently, real, and soaked in everything unsaid. Applause erupted. Zoe screamed, "Viral! I told you, love in the 5G era." Harper laughed against his chest while Oliver whispered in her ear, "I used to have everything, but I've never had this." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "You're terrible at keeping secrets, and great at taking risks. Did I win yet?" "For now. Don't lose your touch, Mr. Grant." 3 hours later, the video titled "CEO Confesses in the Rain at Bookstore" went viral on TikTok. The first comment was from Harper. "I'm not paying for product placement in this scene." Oliver's reply came right below it. "I already paid with my heart, sweetheart." If Harper Lee's life were a movie, the behind-the-scenes featurette would definitely be called "How a CEO Earned Forgiveness with Chocolate and a Handwritten Letter." 3 days after the rain confession that went viral on TikTok, Zoe's video had already hit 2.4 million views, complete with hundreds of dramatic comments. "If he doesn't marry her, I'm suing for emotional damages." "Hey Harper, drop the bookstore address. I need a copy of How to Confess to a CEO Who Looks Like a Wet Cat." By comment number 72, Harper tossed her phone onto the couch, blushing, laughing, and mortified all at once. That's when someone knocked on her door. She opened it. To no one. Only a small box of chocolates tied with a red ribbon and a cream-colored envelope sitting neatly on the doormat. On the envelope, in his unmistakable handwriting, straight, elegant, too perfect for a man once nicknamed the Financial Wolf, were the words, "To the girl who made me relearn how to tell the truth." O.G. Harper lifted the chocolates, unfolded the letter, and instantly smelled the faintest trace of vanilla. Harper, I used to believe I didn't have to say anything, that numbers, plans, and results spoke for themselves. Then you came along, and everything I knew about control became meaningless. I can't promise to be perfect, but I can promise that if you're ever angry again, I'll show up at your door with chocolate, not logic. Because in the end, love doesn't need quarterly reports. It just needs to exist. Oliver, Harper laughed. Not because the letter wasn't sweet, but because it was too sweet. Oh my God, she muttered. He writes like a man who just graduated from creative writing for Lonely CEOs 101. Still, her fingers trembled as she held the page. Every word, even the clumsy ones, felt real. Right on cue, her phone rang. Zoe sounded like someone who just won the lottery. Have you checked the news? Your video's trending in the love and humanity section. The hashtag bookstore love is exploding. Perfect. Netflix's rom-com department is going to sue us next. Whatever, he's so hot and so sincere. The girls at my office are all obsessed. So, are you two back together? Not yet. I'm betting $50 you will be. And you wouldn't want to make me lose money, right? Zoe, you're the definition of best friends comfort you, close friends place bets on your love life. Exactly. Now go make me rich. Harper hung up, still smiling, and a few minutes later, she grabbed her coat, clutched the box of chocolates, and ran out the door. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened. She weaved through the glowing rows of shop fronts, her heart pounding like it did before every big interview. At Grant Tower, the security guard barely looked surprised. He said if you came, to send you straight up. He said that? Yes, ma'am. Oh, and he mentioned, don't ask about the chocolates in the elevator. Harper burst out laughing. He's turning this whole skyscraper into a marketing campaign for love. When she reached the top floor, the glass doors slid open. Oliver stood by the massive window, city lights painting his silhouette, a coffee cup in his hand. He heard her steps but didn't turn around yet. You read the letter? Yeah, and I have 2 notes. I'm ready. 1, your writing is scarily good. 2, you use way too many financial metaphors for a love confession. He turned smiling. I'm a CEO, not a poet. I use the language I know. And I hate that I actually understood it. That's the problem. They stared at each other in silence, thick with something unspoken. Harper stepped closer and handed him the box of chocolates. Here, consider this a response. I thought you hated chocolate. I do. But right now, I hate not saying yes even more. Oliver blinked. So that means? Yes, you idiot! I'm saying yes. No secrets, no roles, no scripts this time. Just you and me? And chocolate! Don't forget the chocolate. He laughed, stepping forward, gently cupping her cheek. I've signed hundreds of contracts, but this is the only one I ever want to keep forever. You're doing the CEO talk again. Habit. But if it's love, I'm willing to restructure everything. She smiled, then rose on her toes and kissed him. This one wasn't like the viral rain kiss. No cameras and no applause. Just real. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. A text from Zoe. I bet $50 you'd get back together. Thanks for helping me win. Harper laughed, resting her head on Oliver's shoulder. Zoe won. And me? He asked. You won bigger because you get to lose with me. Oliver smiled. Let's hope she bets again, because I plan to keep you forever. Harper playfully narrowed her eyes. You really need to stop saying things that make women feel emotionally taxed. Never. I just realized happiness is the only investment that never goes bankrupt. No one warned Harper that living with a CEO was basically an accelerated course in loving while also becoming a survival coach. On her first day moving into Oliver's apartment, she opened the fridge and nearly burst out laughing. No vegetables, no eggs, no milk. Only 12 bars of expensive chocolate, 3 bottles of Italian wine, and one $200 jar of truffle paste. Harper grabbed a pen and scribbled a note on a sticky. Note for women, CEOs don't know how to use a washing machine, don't know how to cook, and think chocolate is a food group. Oliver walked by holding a cup of coffee, glancing at the note. I object to the washing machine part. I know how to use it, just not which button is start. Good, because if you hit spin by mistake one more time, I'll have to rescue your shirts before they turn into tissue paper. I think you're exaggerating. You think a $300 dress shirt shrinking to cat size is an exaggeration? Oliver pressed his lips together. Harper lifted her mug, smiling. Welcome to the real-life romance phase, Mr. Grant. The penthouse on the 41st floor was no longer silent. Now it echoed with Harper humming nonsense while cooking, Zoe video calling to complain, your CEO stole an innocent woman's kitchen, and occasionally the smell of burnt pastry filling the living room. One morning, Harper opened the fridge and looked at the updated chocolate collection. You know, this is a cacao invasion. My fridge is officially a sweet museum now. It's so I always have an apology ready in case I mess up. Then I should hope you mess up often. This one's my favorite. He stepped closer, smirking. I could be wrong more often if you'd like. No need. But you can wash the dishes. Worst deal in a CEO's career. That afternoon, Harper suggested cooking together. She handed him an apron that said, kiss the cook. I'm not wearing this. You'd rather wear a suit? At least suits don't demand I kiss the chef. Relax, it's not an order. Just part of the rom-com contract. Oliver glanced around the kitchen like he was analyzing a balance sheet. Where do I start? By not letting your sleeve touch the stove flame. Noted. The result, Harper laughing so hard she nearly cried while Oliver tried to season by instinct and ended up burning the edges of his omelet. What are you, Gordon Ramsay in finance? I'm calling this dish burnt confidence. Dinner that night had more smoke than aroma, but they ate every bite not because it was good, but because it was fun. Later, Harper leaned against the balcony railing, watching city lights ripple across the Hudson River. Oliver came over, placing a blanket gently on her shoulders. Don't you find it strange, she asked softly. You've lived your whole life surrounded by expensive things, yet the only time you look at peace is when the kitchen's on fire and your shirt's covered in flour. I'd never laugh during a meal before you. You make it sound like I'm a professional laughter therapist. Maybe, but you're more effective than any therapy I've ever tried. She looked up at him, the lights glinting in her eyes. Aren't you scared? Of what? That one day I'll leave, like the others did. No, because if that ever happens, at least I'll know I lived honestly while you were here. His answer silenced her. Not because it was romantic, but because it was so sincere, it made her heart tremble. The next morning, Harper woke early. Oliver was still asleep, one arm resting across his forehead. Sunlight spilled over his face, peaceful without a trace of the ice-cold CEO. She smiled and wrote in her little notebook on the kitchen counter, Cohabitation Experiment Day 7, 1. He still hasn't memorized the start button on the washing machine. 2. He can now tell sugar from salt sometimes. 3. And I've learned that love doesn't need a script. It just needs someone patient enough not to walk away in the mess. That evening, they sat on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber. Harper rested her head on his shoulder, nibbling the piece of chocolate he offered. Do you still believe chocolate solves everything? There's no data proving otherwise. You should open a relationship consulting firm. Already have my first client. I'm not paying you. Don't need to. I get paid in smiles. Harper laughed, shaking her head. You really don't know when to stop winning. I only win when you're here. She turned to him, kissed his cheek, and whispered, You know, I used to think love had to be grand and cinematic. But it turns out having someone to laugh with while washing dishes is enough. I think that's what real happiness looks like. Yeah. They sat in silence watching the sun sink below the skyline, golden light reflecting off distant glass towers. No more sunflowers. No more rain. No more dramatic confessions. Just two people, a messy kitchen, in two hearts that had finally learned how to love for real. No one ever imagined that one day Oliver Grant, the cold, finance-obsessed CEO who once found stock charts more attractive than love poems, would be standing in front of a small shop, hammering in a wooden sign that read, Lee and Grant Books, where stories find their second life. Harper stood beside him, holding a paintbrush, her white shirt splattered with ink, hair tied up in a messy bun. She tilted her head, admiring the final strokes of his lettering. You know, you write like a man signing a peace treaty. I've signed $200 million deals with less stress than this. That's because those deals didn't involve paint colors and feelings. He smiled, gently wiping a spot of ink from her cheek with his thumb. All right, artist. The shop's almost ready. Not a shop, she corrected softly. A dream. Lee and Grant Books opened on a golden autumn morning. Sunlight streamed through the wide glass windows, mixing the smell of coffee and new paper, a scent that felt both nostalgic and alive. One corner held the coffee counter, with beige ceramic mugs Harper had personally chosen. The other corner reading tables, scented candles, and a small piano Oliver had insisted on placing there, so the afternoons won't be silent. Guests began to arrive, friends, neighbors, even a few familiar faces who used to buy Harper's secondhand books at the flea market. Zoe bustled around like an overexcited event manager. Harper! The espresso machine works. Oh, and I hung the CEO barista sign. Zoe, please don't make him sound demoted. Relax. The moment people see him in an apron, they order an extra cup on instinct. Oliver emerged from behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, holding a tray of espressos. The look they shared, mischievous and warm, belonged to two people who had already survived chaos and still chosen each other. I've acquired hundreds of companies, he said, setting down the tray, but this is the first time I feel like I'm building something. Careful. That sentence sounds dangerously close to a caffeine addiction. Too late. I'm already addicted to something else. What's that? Listening to you talk. Harper flushed, playfully swatting his hand. Say things like that in front of customers, and I'm docking your pay. I'm the one paying you. Then I'll deduct it from your pride. Just as laughter filled the shop, a familiar figure stepped through the door. Harper turned and froze. Vivian Grant, elegant as ever. Black dress, silk scarf, oversized sunglasses, and a bouquet of lavender in hand. The air seemed to be still for a heartbeat. Oliver blinked in surprise, then straightened, calm as ever. Mother, I heard you've opened a book and coffee shop. Not just me. Harper's my partner. Vivian nodded slightly, her gaze gliding toward Harper. Not sharp, just quietly observant. May I take a look around? Of course, Mrs. Grant, Harper replied politely, voice steady but light. Vivian walked slowly along the rows of shelves, fingers brushing across old hardcovers. She stopped in front of a framed photo on the wall. Harper and Oliver, both covered in flour, laughing over a half-burnt cake in their kitchen. Vivian smiled faintly. I've never seen him laugh like that. Harper, standing nearby, answered softly. Maybe because baking doesn't require him to prove anything. It just lets him be a person. Vivian turned to her, her gaze softening for the first time. You might be the best thing that's ever happened to him. I know, Harper said gently. It just wasn't time for you to realize it yet. For a moment's silence, then Vivian let out a real, unguarded laugh. Perhaps it is time. Two women, one understanding. Later that afternoon, when the shop quieted down, Harper noticed Vivian sitting in a corner, reading Pride and Prejudice. She brought over 2 espressos. Vivian looked up. I thought you didn't like strong coffee. I'm learning to, Harper replied. Just like learning to accept certain people. They clinked their cups together, a small sound, but it echoed far. They were no longer the CEO's girlfriend and the intimidating stepmother. Just 2 women, once lonely, once fearful of love, both having built walls too high. Now sitting at the same table, they shared the quietest kind of peace. Acceptance. Oliver approached, resting a hand on Harper's shoulder. I didn't expect today to be this peaceful. Peace doesn't come when we chase it, she said softly. It comes when we stop being afraid. You sound like a philosopher. No, just someone who survived. The 3 of them looked out the window. Golden sunlight streamed through the glass, falling over the shelves, illuminating the sign. Lee and Grant Books. Harper gazed at it, her heart full and calm. I used to think beautiful stories only existed in books. Now I know sometimes they're written outside the pages, by hand, with courage. Oliver leaned in, kissing her forehead. Vivian smiled quietly, taking her last sip of espresso. I once thought women like you only existed in fiction. Perhaps I haven't read enough. That's all right, Harper grinned. We're open every day. You can come read more. Vivian chuckled genuinely this time. Careful, Miss Lee. I might become a regular. That's exactly what I'm hoping for. That evening, the Lee and Grant book sign glowed softly over the small street. Inside, laughter mingled with the scent of coffee and lavender. A new chapter had begun. No judgment, no walls. Only people who had learned to love, to forgive, and to smile when looking back at how far they'd come. A year later, Harper sat by the bookstore window, sipping coffee as she typed her new blog post. If you've ever sent the wrong text, don't delete it too fast. Maybe you weren't wrong. Maybe you just sent it to the right person in the strangest way. She laughed and added one last line. And if that person replies, smile. Because maybe destiny knows how to use emojis too. The doorbell chimed. Oliver walked in a gray suit, holding a box of chocolates and a sunflower. This time, I'm sure I've got the right address. Not sure, she teased. But if it's wrong, will you still find me? Always. He placed the chocolate box on the table. Hazelnut caramel. I know it's your favorite. Because it's just like you, sweet, overpriced, and slightly addictive. I'll take all of that. From behind the counter, Zoe shouted, "Oh my God!" The wrong text turned into the right marriage. The whole cafe burst into laughter. Harper covered her face while Oliver laughed openly. He pulled out a chair, sat beside her, and whispered, "If anyone asks, I'll tell them it all started with a misdirected message." And ended with what? A smile that found the right person. She looked at him, the afternoon light catching his hair, glowing like an everyday miracle. They shared chocolate as laughter spread through the shop. Outside the window, the Lee and Grant book sign reflected the sunset, and beneath it, the small inscription gleamed, "Where mistakes find meaning."